Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Angela. I work in Entrepreneur Libraries, and today I have with me Julie, who also works for Entrepreneur. She is going to be asking some questions as well. And of course, we've got our guest of honor, Deborah Rodriguez. Thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you. I'm so happy to be here. This is really fun.
Excellent. So for anyone that doesn't know, hasn't used Zoom much, if you want to ask any questions, click the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen, and then Julie will ask some questions nearer the end. If you can't see the Q&A button, just hover your mouse, press the mouse, and it will come up. It's a bar that seems to disappear. If you want to put the book on hold, so we've got the book, it's hard to see because I've got my background, but we have got the book in the library that you can place on hold. You can phone us, do it online, visit us. They're the ways you can put it on hold. You can also purchase her book at Dimmock's Glenelg. So if you're in South Australia, you can head down to our beachside suburb of Glenelg, and there's a bookshop down there who will have stocked this book. So you can purchase the book as well if you want. If you have been collecting Deborah's other books, you might want to also have this one because it's very good. I'd also like to thank Penguin Random House for giving us this opportunity. It's been amazing. And so that is my introduction. So don't forget, ask questions and we will put them to Deborah and she will answer them where she can. So my first question, after reading the book and then looking online at your bio, I see that you've had such an interesting life. You're in Mexico at the moment, but you've also lived in the Bahamas and Afghanistan as well. So, and you're a hairdresser, but you've done so much more than just be a hairdresser. So my first question isn't really book related. But I really wanted to know what I was going to say possessed you, but I'll change it to inspired you to want to go to Afghanistan and help their country.
I had trained in disaster relief, and the team that I trained with had this was like August of 2001, and that the team that I trained with had spent quite a bit of time in Afghanistan during the Talib time, during the Mujahideen and the Civil War time. And after I was deployed out to Ground Zero when the trade towers came down in New York City, September 11, and it was at that time that I kind of became obsessed with Afghanistan, and it was all over the news. All you could see was, Osama bin Laden and, hunting for Osama bin Laden, all that sort of stuff, and Afghanistan. And so I saw the women and how the situation was over there. And I really wanted to go and see if I could do anything. And so I went actually with my team, I believe in like that May of 2002. And it was when I was there working with the team, I realized that I'm always a hairdresser. I bring my shears with me everywhere. I always have a cape, a water bottle, a comb and scissors, and I'm ready to go. And it was then that I became kind of popular because nobody had had a haircut. They had been either like missionaries had not had haircuts, and the reporters were just from everywhere, from around the world, and they had been in Afghanistan like 3-4 months without a haircut. So that's when I got bombarded with requests to do hair, and it's when I started to question why are they want their haircut by me and not other, the Afghans. That's when I researched and went into a few of the salons that had popped up, basically, risen out of the ground from the ashes after the Taliban had shut them down, they didn't allow people to wear makeup or have their hair done or wear white shoes or fingernail polish or any of that sort of stuff. So it was then that I really thought, how can I make a difference here? I thought about bringing supplies back, but it was somebody says, why would you do that? Why don't you come back and start a school? And I'm like, well, I don't know why. I mean, I don't know how I would do that. And you know what? It was, I think, just some tenacity, thinking I could do it, and I did. But it was hard. It was hard, and I worked with some other people and co-founded the first beauty school. So kind of like happened like that.
That's amazing because you don't really think of hair when you think of a war-torn country, do you? Like it's not.
No, no. You know what? And it was so interesting. I remember I was doing a medical team when I first came there. So we were working with Afghan women, and every time they had that, the burqas with the little mesh here, they would flip their burqa up over their head, and they all had frizzy, permed, frizzy orange hair because they were doing perms with sticks, little teeny sticks, and like old perm solution and putting henna on their hair. And I thought, oh goodness, that was like when I realized that that was my calling to help change that situation.
Wow, that's great. Um, what did you always know at some point that you wanted to be a writer? Because obviously you've done so much other stuff with the hairdressing. When did you decide to become a writer?
I think I guess you become a writer when you write your first book or article or whatever. I had always written. I never considered myself, honestly, a writer. I always considered myself a storyteller. Like I think probably because I was from the hairdressing background. My mom's a hairdresser. We're three generations of hairdressers in our family. And definitely from a storytelling background. So I always had that, and I always wrote my stories down, but I always thought of it as storytelling and not writing because I don't know, I never, and it wasn't until it took me a while to wrap my head around writer, right? Because I said, no, I'm just telling a story. And but I did a lot of, I wrote a lot of one act plays, and I wrote a lot of like, sketches. I journaled. I just did the probably similar to what a lot of writers do when they're younger.
What process did you follow? Like with your first book, how did you find your publisher to get it published? And
I had been keeping, I kept notes, or I kept an extensive journal when I was in Afghanistan, mainly because mental health wise, Afghanistan's tough, right? And I needed to write everything down. I didn't, number one, didn't want to forget it. And so after a few years of literally documenting everything, I had I had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages. And somebody said, you really have got a book here, that, right? And I already had all of it, most of it documented. And so people who know people who helped me get an agent, right? I mean, it was like the Afghanistan was so full of very creative people from so many walks of life. And so I was introduced to my agent, and I told her what I wanted to do. And she's like, wow. Well, the beauty school had gotten so much press by this time, right? It had gotten so much press that, you know, it was a story that needed to be written.
Probably you were, yeah, right time and right place with all the publicity that was already there as well.
Yeah, it was. It was definitely right time, right place. Absolutely.
With your latest book, The Moroccan Daughter, which is what we're talking about today, there's a lot going on in this book. So you'd think with that in mind, it would be a really hard read because you've got the clash of culture, you've got family secrets, and you've got the family dynamic. How do you interweave it so that it flows so well when you read it? Like, didn't it looked effortless to me, but I'm thinking it probably wasn't to have all them themes in this book.
Well, I think that I mean, that's literally part of the fabric of Morocco. So it would be impossible to have a book that doesn't touch on these things, right? Um, I don't know. I never really even thought about it like that before because it is eliminate a clash of culture. You're eliminating a part of Morocco, right? You eliminate the family dynamic. You're eliminating such a huge part of the Moroccan existence. And so the dance had to happen, right? And it felt like, it felt natural, right? Because it is what it is. It is part of who they are.
How do you obviously do a lot of research about? Because a lot of that
Yeah,
is, it's not like you can read it in a book. It is the family dynamics and the cultures with the Mina, especially getting married. Like, it's
right.
almost like an experience, isn't it?
You know, I had wanted to write a book that took place in Morocco since, I don't know, 2008, 2009, something like that. But it's just not that easy. You don't say, "Oh, I want to write a book in Morocco." But you have to find that perfect story and you have to have the perfect characters to go with the story. And so I had already had B and Charlie, the idea when Island on the Edge of the World was, when I wrote that, I knew I wanted B and Charlie to go on other adventures. That was the plan with them in the very beginning. But I had somebody contact me and said, I know that you are interested in writing a book in Morocco. I have somebody I want you to meet. And it was a Moroccan American woman who whose father was a director of prison, who lived on the compound of the prison, similar to Amina, who married an American. You know, her family was an affluent family. They're not from Fez, but and you know, obviously it's not her family. It, but she inspired Amina. She stayed on as a consultant through the entire process. There, I mean, she was such a strong part of the book, right? And then it's so important. Something as simple as the scene in the beauty shop, right? The scene in the beauty shop is very different than going to a beauty shop in Australia or in the United States. And it was a Moroccan hairdresser who worked with me on that. So you have to have, and then of course I spent time in Morocco and did research. I always have to go in the footsteps of my character after it's been storyboarded out, and I basically know where people are going and what they're doing in the storyline. That's when I take my trip. And then a lot of things change, things are added, things are taken away. For instance, B, who is you know, she's older, she's blind, she's quirky, eccentric, bohemian grandmother. And when I first walked into the Medina in Fez, I'm thinking to myself, this is going to be really hard for B because she's blind. And the Medina is so chaotic. There's donkey carts coming at you. There's donkey poop on the ground. There's cats you're stumbling over, and there's vendors, and they're little alleyways. They're little small. There's no cars. And so it was because my girlfriend came with me. Two of my girlfriends came with me, and one of them had just had knee surgery about 6 weeks before the trip. And when she got into Fez, we were trying to go from the gate, getting inside the Medina, to the Riyadh, the house we were staying in, and it was about a 30-minute walk. And she says, I don't know if I can, I don't think I can manage Fez. I don't think I can do it. I'm going to damage my knee. And I'm thinking, I don't think you can do it. And I don't think B can do it. Like, I was struggling, and I had good knees and I could see, and I was still tripping over the sidewalks and the uneven bricks and all kinds of things. A landmine of full of stuff to trip over. And it was then the caretaker for the Riyadh we were at brought out a wheelchair and brought a guy to push Linda around in the wheelchair. We're able to have her close her eyes and experience the Medina with her eyes closed, which that was never on the plan, right? So it was like things like that happen while you're researching, and it just makes the story so much richer. The things that you stumble upon while you're walking in the path of your characters is so amazing. It has changed storylines for me so often, but I love it. That's my favorite part of all of it is that walking in their footsteps.
That was going to be my next question, how, because the characters are they're not just like words on a page, they are very fully formed characters that you really have empathy for, and you want to know what happens with them at the end. And especially with B, there was one particular scene in the book where all of the household was going on doing its stuff, but they didn't count her as listening to them because she was blind.
Right.
That was such a good, accurate description of probably what a blind person would feel. And do you do that type of research for a lot of, like, all your characters, try to put yourself in their shoes?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's, like Amina, I had the friend that I had met who in my head is my Amina, right? And so, um, yeah, I mean, you always are. It's important, I think, and it's important to have, like I always need sensitivity readers, right? And I always have, because I'm dealing with, you know, people from different tribes, and the Arabic Moroccans, which were, in Fez, and also along with the Amazigh people who are up in the mountains. So it was so important to understand from their point of view, understand it from the male point of view, understand it from the female point of view, and have them read the book. I mean, it's tricky when you're trying to find somebody who is needing to read an English book, right? But I mean, it's amazing the resources and the people that step up to. It takes a village to write a book, I think. I mean, I love it that way.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. So you've written, I think you've written 7 fiction books. So I think you've got a few non-fiction titles.
Five fiction, 2 nonfiction.
And they're all based in other countries around the world. Do you draw a lot of your stories from people you've met or your experiences?
A lot of it, most of it's from, well, often it's from people, the combination, people I meet. I have a girlfriend that I said, you know, someday you will be a character in a book. And she was. I put her in the Zanzibar Wife. And I love that. But it's also the people I meet, the experiences I have. Living in Mexico, it's very vibrant here, and it's very sometimes chaotic. And so I'm kind of always in that sort of world anyways. And so, you know, going to Morocco, landing yourself, I mean, I typically am not writing, you know, books that take place in easier areas, so to speak.
Yeah.
I do love the hustle. I love the chaos. And I like the there's always a surprise because it's a little off the beaten path. Not that Morocco's really off the beaten path. Tons of people are going there on holidays, but this wedding festival was so off the beaten path. And I think that when you go a little bit inside of a family, you get to see things that maybe you would not normally experience or see if you're on vacation.
That is very, very true. Excellent. Well, that is all the questions I had for you. So I'm going to hand over to Julie now and see if she's got any questions from the audience.
Thanks, Angela. The first question for you, Deborah. How do you choose the names of your characters?
Oh, you know, that's always a really tough. They start out with it's really funny. You start out with this random name, right? And you're kind of writing your first draft, and then all of a sudden you go through the book and you're reading it, and all your names start with an A. Like, you know what I mean? It's really funny. It's like, oh my goodness, I must have been in an A kind of mood because, or like, it's weird. Like you'll have everybody is, you know, a Cindy, a Candace, a Ceci, and then you have to go through often at the very end, I have to go through and change all the names, all of them, because once you start writing, you have these names in your head and it's hard to change the manuscript midway and keep the and I always like to have names that I can pronounce. Like, and I find it if I'm reading a book and I can't figure out how to say the name, it distracts me and I skip a beat when I'm reading it.
Yes, that's a good point, actually. It must be interesting when you change the names along the way. And I guess in the end, they end up being who they are. And for example, can you imagine B being anyone other than B?
B was always B. B and Charlie have always been B and Charlie from the very beginning. I think Tariq, his name might have changed. I can't even remember what it was before. Amina and Samira. Samira's name definitely changed. But yeah, it was. And the thing is trying to find names that are traditional for their heritage, right? So with Samira being an Amazigh name, she's Amazigh. So I needed to find names that would be traditionally used there, right? So you got to be authentic all the way through.
Yes. So that's obviously part of your research process in your writing.
Right. Yeah.
Now, the next question, what do you find to be the most rewarding and the most challenging parts of writing in general?
You know, I think that when you have a story, or when you have an idea and you really are, sometimes you get to this point where every time you go through your storyboard, you get to this one place and you get stuck. And like, no matter how many times you do it, you get stuck. And it's like, that doesn't make sense. Something has to change there. And sometimes that's really frustrating. So you think, okay, I'm just going to go back to where, start here, and then I'll work through. You get to that same place yet again. And sometimes when that happens for me, I reach out to, I actually reach out to some very creative friends, and I will sometimes sit on Zoom or FaceTime for hours and hours and hours and rehash the whole story. I always keep a lot. I keep quite a few people with me along the way, from the beginning of the book all the way to the end, so that I can uh, problem solve some of the characters as I'm going through. That's my most frustrating part.
Right. Well, it's great that you have the network of people that you can contact whenever needed, which leads actually into the next question that we have today. Just wanting to know how the global pandemic, with its travel restrictions, has that affected either your research or your writing process and style?
Well, there's a book I'd like to start working on, and I am unable to go to the location to research it, which is fine. I'm, okay with that, because I know soon I will be able to travel again. But yeah, I think we've all sat tight. The book was really worked on during the pandemic, so I had done my research right before the pandemic hit. So I feel really lucky, because if this had been 1 year later, there would not have been a book. I mean, I wouldn't have been able to make the trip to Morocco. I wouldn't have gone to the wedding festival. So yeah, so this timed out quite well for me.
That seems very fortunate. Just as an aside there, would that have caused issues with publishers and deadlines? I'm not sure what your schedule is.
Yeah, I don't know what would have happened. I don't know. It would have been really, really tricky. I have no idea how that would have worked out, because I traveled in August, September of 2019 to Morocco. So if that was just a year later, so I'm just thankful it wasn't, because the wedding festival got canceled for the first time in, hundreds of years. It got canceled. And that was such a pivotal point in the book.
Yes, indeed. So,
and that was information that would be very difficult to get online. There was impossible to get really good information online.
Yeah. What is the daily work day for you as a writer? How do you structure when you're writing your book each day?
Well, I think it depends on what I'm working on, right? If so I have a little spa here in Mexico. So that means I'm still running a spa during all of this, right? So all my time cannot be just writing, because I've got a whole staff I need to deal with. But I try to time everything around we're seasonal. It's a tourist area. which now there's no tours, so we're fine. But right. But typically I will I'm either a late night or early. I'm morning or late night. Like I'm not midday. I'm not a midday writer. I like to, have my coffee. I often like to, because I'm always have a lot of things going on. I have a big family here, and so I've got lots of grandkids. And so, like they've been homeschooling at my house. So, they need to be gone before, and the volume of the house needs to go down. And so then it's I sit up on the roof patio and I work there and listen to the sounds all around me. And so.
Well, it sounds lovely. Obviously, you've got a very busy household, and it's nice that you can enjoy your family time as well as your other commitments, and still not feel too rushed and stressed to do your writing by the sounds, having that lovely space to do that in.
Yeah.
Now, another question we have is, what advice would you give to a writer who are writing their first book?
I think that, this is the question that I get a lot of people saying, I want to write a book. And I say, okay, so what do you want to write about? And they says, well, I think I have a story that I've experienced that I want to tell. Or they are older and they have experienced so much and they want to share it with their family. And they get overwhelmed by writing a book. I always say always tell them, you know what, break it way down. Write a snapshot, like write just this one small snapshot that you have in your head. If it's say nonfiction, right? And if you're versus like trying to put the whole pie in your mouth, just take a little bite and just get this little vignette and just collect those, right? Like most people who want to write a book, they have a hard time sitting down and writing it because they sit at the keyboard and they become overwhelmed and they don't know where to start. And that's why I just say, just start with one small little moment. Just take moments and write those down. And even if it's a fiction, like you still are going from kind of how you want it to go, just teeny snapshots, and start that way. It's like so much easier than because most people will freeze once they get to the computer and they don't write anything.
Sounds like good advice, and small steps to get to a big book.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. Who is your favorite author and why?
I have two really favorite authors. One is Jamie Ford. He writes fictional history, which is all basically Chinese and Japanese based characters, not a lot to do with the internment here in the United States back during, I don't know, when Pearl Harbor was, I think in the 40s or something, but during that period. And also Lisa C. writes all her books are, again, fictional history that take place in usually China. And I love the being transported. I also, I like anything that has to do with the royal family. I could read anything with a royal family. It's like I'm obsessed with that. I can't stand it. Like, just let me have a royal family. I'll read anything.
Interesting. So very
funny?
different to what you like to write. Yeah, obviously there's that interest in other countries as well. Which
Yeah,
is
I will read. I read Dina Jeffries is another fantastic author, and all hers take place in different countries. I like being transported often to the past, and I like being transported into a different country. I definitely like that. I wish I could do fictional history. I don't have enough of that history buff in me to be able to carry that off. But if I could, I definitely would. That would be something I wish I could do.
something to work towards, perhaps.
Right.
Last question for you, Deborah. It sounded like you alluded to the fact that you have a new writing project. Is there anything that you're able to share with us about that?
Not a lot. I mean, it's a story. It's a kind of a personal story that I have gone through something similar to what I want to write about. Basically, with a personal story with my mom, and I don't know how you use, kind of elder abuse is what part of it, and the rescuing of what older people go through, and what us kids go through. And so I would love to write this story, but I don't want to write it in a nonfiction format. I want to write it. I brought my mother to Mexico. I was actually, I don't know, took her from a very bad situation, and with dementia, bad dementia, brought her to Mexico. And I want to write the book called Stealing Mom, because my mom thrived here, and the wonder, the whole dementia, and the daughter, and I would love to see B and Charlie get right in the middle of all this. So it's a very personal story to me, but I would love to tell it in a fictional format. And so I keep thinking that Colombia would be a wonderful place for that story to take place.
Wow, that sounds fascinating, and another good book to look out for, with a lot of themes in that one, obviously.
Yeah,
so that sounds like a really good read. So good luck with that one.
Yeah.
Well, it's time to wrap it up. So thank you so much, Deborah, for joining us today all the way from Mexico. We really appreciate it. It's been lovely talking to you.
Yes.
Like to thank our host, Angela. Thank you very much. And the audience, of course, for joining us today. We do this for you. Please do follow us on Facebook, and you can see what other events and things we have on, more online author talks. I will just mention that we have Mary Lee on the 18th of March. And also we do, as part of our Ladies of Crime series, we have Pip Drysdale coming up on the 24th of March as well. And we will also be just emailing out a little survey from Feedbackly, if you would be so kind as to fill that out if you have a chance. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much. And thank you for doing this today. It was wonderful.
That's okay. Take care. Chat soon.
Okay.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.